What was the please stop school presentation that you witnessed? Not a presentation, but during our school assemblies we often had student performers, which were usually musically inclined individuals or theater kids doing a scene monologue. One kid decided to do a stand-up comedy routine about a girl giving him a blowjob. So awkward, and the principal had to interrupt him. A friend of mine did a stand-up routine for a talent show. I laughed for him because no one else was. His younger brother came up to me afterwards and thanked me for laughing because he didn't want to be the one to fake it. Thank you, Kevin, that's enough. But I haven't finished yet. It was my sophomore year English class. This kid who was reading his essay in front of the class and started to stumble over some of the words. The teacher recognized the words and found the essay the kid plagiarized and started helping him read. The kid didn't understand what was happening and just thanked the teacher and kept reading. I watched a kid in his last year of high school start his presentation with, "I might fuck up while presenting this because I plagiarized the whole thing last night and barely practiced." The prof didn't hear what the student said, but just acted like they did and gave a smile and thumbs up signaling that the student could begin presenting. The whole class heard it, but everyone was just too shocked and curious to see if he would actually be able to pull it off. I'm pretty sure he did. Balls a move, Jason. Balls a move. I went to school for computer security. In an Introduction to Computer Security course, we had to do a project on social engineering. A student decided that for his project he was going to find a way to gain access to a chosen website. 1. He found a small local business website. 2. Identified that the domain was registered to an email address from a local ISP. 3. Called the ISP to reset the password. They asked him for his last 4 of his SSN, so he hung up. 4. He found the phone number of the business, so called them and pretended to be from the ISP, offering 3 months free if the person did a 5-question survey. They accepted, and answered some bullshit questions. Then he asked for the last 4 of the guy's SSN, which they gave no problem. 5. He then called the ISP with the last 4, got them to reset the password of the email account. 6. He then logged into the email, and used it to get the domain registrar to send a password reset to the email, which he used to reset the password of the domain account, and deleted the email. 7. He recorded all phone calls and screenshotted the whole process. As he presented all these, we kept expecting him to say, "But that would be illegal, so I didn't do X," but he went all the way. The professor finally stopped him after he said he logged into the domain registrar and told him to destroy everything and never speak of it again. I think the professor was a bit nicer than he could have been, potentially to the point of accomplice, telling him to destroy evidence. I hope that kid works as someone who blocks hackers now. I mean, in reality, he found so many security holes it isn't funny. That is actually incredibly impressive. I'd hire him to test the safety of my website any day. In history class, we all had to do a presentation about some sort of injustice in the world. One kid chose a prison camp for his topic. All his PowerPoint slides were photos of men being stripped, chained, whipped, and so on and so on. We were 13. Yes, his project was about Abu Ghraib. How far did the teacher let him go before he was stopped? The second slide. Teacher interrupted to ask how many explicit pictures there were. The student showed the thumbnails of the slides, and it was something like 40 slides long. In Speech 101 in college, we had to pick a children's book and voice act each character. That was it. That was the entire assignment. Well, one student decided to take it to the next level. He chose a Berenstain Bear book and decided to not only do voice acting for every single one of the characters, but also act it out. It was physically uncomfortable to watch this guy scramble around the room and pretend to be bears and other animals. It was not well done. It was awful. That sounds hilarious. It definitely would have been really fine if it wasn't so sad, if that makes sense. Everyone in the room was very uncomfortable. You could feel it. Psychology class. Our final was to research into a presentation on a mental illness. One group chose necrophilia. Started with the first slide saying, "Let's crack open a cold one." For 8th grade talent show, 2 girls sang the Mr. Bledel song. Mr. Bledel was a good-looking, recently college-graduated teacher that basically was about how cute they thought he was. Even then, It was incredibly uncomfortable, and I remember looking at the teacher's face, and he didn't seem very amused. God, I would hate to be that teacher. I remember in high school one young and cool English teacher had to stop teaching English to seniors because they were so obviously obsessed with him. It was gross and uncomfortable. Smart kid in the class was giving a deeply sourced PowerPoint presentation on religion in Europe. He opens up his files, proceeds to click on his project named Nigger. He says, "Clearly I wasn't really paying any attention when I named my file." He gives the presentation. He stutters and sweats bullets while we watch in utter disbelief. The word is sitting there on the top of the file heading the whole time. This was during a study abroad semester while attending a cultural communication class. He had to rot in his own shit after that. Bro, what happened to him though? Some people left class for the day because of the incident. This were black friends of his that were kinda shocked, and they just decided to walk out. The teacher asked everyone to stay to talk about what happened, and the guy broke down a bit. It was uncomfortable. Luckily for him, the class was ending within the next week or two, so I believe he took his exams and such outside of the classroom. It's me. I did this. I cringe about it to this day, nearly 20 years later. I was 16 and in high school. My high school was going to do a spring talent show. I wanted to be in the talent show and show off my talents. The problem was, my actual talents are not ones that I could show off at a talent show. So I decided to try singing. I have never sung in my life. I have never had voice lessons. I was in my prime weeb stage and chose an anime song to sing. I didn't know any actual Japanese. I had just memorized the lyrics from hearing the songs so many times. Luckily I didn't make it past auditions, but even 20 years later, and remembering it keeps me awake at night. When I was in high school, a girl from an absurdly wealthy family gave a presentation on why the rich are just as oppressed as anyone. This was in a normal public school in Kentucky where about 90% of the students were middle class at best. You could feel the eyes rolling in that room. You just reminded me of my high school speech class where one assignment was to give a speech on your pet peeve. A rich girl gave hers on other people's fashion choices, including such gems as when shoes, bags, and belts don't match, wearing out-of-style clothing, and my personal favorite, wearing the same outfit more than once. In my entire life since, I don't know if I've ever seen anyone more out of touch with an audience. Or reality. We were supposed to have Arnold Schwarzenegger come to our school sometime around 1999 or 2000. Principal was hyping it up for weeks. Then about 4 days before his arrival it was announced on Friday that he wasn't coming. Fast forward to Monday, during morning announcements it's announced he's changed his mind and is coming to our school tomorrow as planned. Come Tuesday morning everyone is excited, we're all amped to meet the Terminator. A handful of parents even came with VHS copies of his movies, posters, etc. We're all going to our gym auditorium, taking our seats. Principal takes the stage, takes the moment to make some announcements. Award, honor roll, perfect attendance, etc. Finally she starts hyping up around Schwarzenegger. Everyone is excited and on edge. When she basically says, "Hey race Arnie," and it's the vice principal in a leather jacket holding a shotgun, not a toy one either, and spends 30 to 40 minutes trying to hype us up for FCAT, all the while doing the absolute worst impression of Arnold Schwarzenegger I've ever heard. Once we realized Arnold wasn't there, people start shouting, screaming at the principals for lying to us, along with some of the parents who came to this. Yes, the principals apologized the next day, and the vice principal changed schools the following school year. I have absolutely no idea why he thought bringing a shotgun was a good idea, but I think he was attempting to look the part, which, considering his massive gut, really didn't help. My sophomore year we had to make a presentation about any person that made an impact on the world that was inspirational. Someone chose Hitler. When I was a 9th grade student, we had to present the poems we made in English class. Most people wrote about embracing their culture, loving their friends, etc., and then there was that one kid who recited a lifestyle poem, which compared fat people to beached whales and said that people who don't work out will die before they're 20. An anti-bullying campaign. They spent most of the presentation explaining different types and ways to harass people. Bullying increased in school and everything got 10 times worse now that the students were more educated on the subject. So, basically it was a class of what not to do. Those never end well. They sincerely meant to try and get people to become aware and stop it when they see it. But we never had heard of some of the tactics they described. Not at school. But when I was in high school, my church youth group went to this church camp. For those uninitiated, Thursday nights are normally the really emotional nights. Well, this camp was different. Thursday night, the guy that started the camp comes on stage and begins giving a bunch of middle school and high school boys and girls the sex talk. All I remember from that night was the quote, "Just because there's a hole there doesn't mean you have to stick something in it." This one happened a few months ago only, actually. We were in law and entrepreneurship class and we had to make a presentation about a made-up company we would invent, and the two clowns made their presentation about a drink, and their slogan was, "If she's drunk she can't say no," and neither of them wanted to read it. They just wanted to skip over it. But the teacher made them read it and asked them to go back to their places. I had never seen someone so calm and angry at the same time. When the class started hesitatingly clapping, the prof said, "Stop, this isn't worth clapping for." Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.